Okay, I decided to break this up into two parts. Partially because my phone was almost going to die again. I didn't want to lose the video. And partially because I was in the middle of a coughing fit. So I left off on, this is part 2 of color changing in case anybody's not watching the description. I left off at the end of row 100 where I need to lock in the white because I'm going to go 4 rows not using it and I don't want a big loose loop. So once again, the explanation for this is that you don't want, I'm going to pretend this is the working one so you can see it easily. You don't want a long bunch of yarn. Hold on, focus. There we go. You don't want a long loop of yarn on the outside. You want it to be locked in. And locking it in will also serve to make sure that the stitch doesn't get enlarged. It gets held in place better. However, because this particular pattern is slipping the first stitch every time, you're never going to have a color change where you change in the first stitch. It's always going to be in the second stitch. So instead of locking this white into the last stitch, where it'll actually look kind of funny, we're going to lock it into the second to last stitch. That way, it will be in position when it's worked. Technically, it'll be 3 rows up from here. It'll be in position for the second stitch to go right into it, and it'll be off the edge enough that you won't be able to get a glimpse of where it's locked in. It will be hidden very well. Normally, this would be a much easier maneuver, but right now, because of where this white is, let me flip it over. And there went my stitch markers. Because of where this white is, it's going to be a little odd how we have to lock it in. So let's make it easier than weird. We are going to lock this in by bringing it to the back. Fairly simple. We're on the wrong side right now. When we carried the white up, let me turn it back to the right side. So when we changed to the orange last time, we dropped this white. Come back here. We dropped the white and we brought the orange up from behind. So the white is just kind of hanging out right at the beginning. Well, we want to bring that white into the second spot. And luckily, where it's located, we can cross it right in front and you won't even be able to tell it happened because it's going to go on top of the other strand. So what we're going to do is, this is row 100 in this case. This is anytime you're going to do a 4 row break between colors, where you're going to work one color for 4 rows. You want to lock that second color in after 2 rows so that it's not, kind of loosey-goosey hanging out. Get my tails out of the way so you can tell which strand is which. Okay, so I'm working with the orange right now. We're calling this orange. This is actually leaves. It's an oopsie skein of leaves that I still can't figure out why it's oopsie, because it's absolutely beautiful. I have not seen one mistake in this. I haven't seen any fried yarn or weird stuff. I can't figure out what in the world is supposed to be wrong with this skein. It even looks the same color as my original did of leaves, so I can't figure out what's different about it. So, here I go. This is the end of row 100. I would be ending with knit, purl for the border. So I did knit, purl. I'm going to do my last 2. So instead of knitting right here with the orange, I'm going to take this white and I'm going to bring it from the front to the back and just let it hang. And now I'm going to finish my last 2 stitches. Knit and purl. Make sure I'm on camera. So this white is now locked in behind. It is not flowing loosely. It's actually coming from this stitch. It's not all hanging out on the side or going loose. It is locked in right here. Let me tighten up this orange so you can see a little bit better. This one got a little stretched out. Just so you know, it was because I was playing with all these. I could very easily make that stitch smaller by just moving the yarn over. I just want to make sure you know that that's why it looks like that. So this white, which technically is over here, is now locked into the second stitch. If you wanted to, you could actually relock it in on the next row and make it even more solid. You don't have to. So as of right now, this white, it's tucked in there. It's not flowing loosely. That's plenty to hold it in place. So I'm going to go to row 101. And we're still working with the orange. Now, this white right here, you want to make sure that your edge stitches, like I said, you don't want them too tight. They should be a little bit taller than 2 rows. So make sure that these are stretching enough when you go. Like if I pull this orange too tight, it's going to lock up my edges. So I want to make sure that I have a little bit of space. So let's look at how that would look. That's about the size of a stitch, of 1 stitch so far, which means I'm going to pinch this down and make sure I don't pull it any tighter when I slip my stitch. So on row 101, it says carrying color 2 up the edge. You're going to slip 1 and then purl, knit, purl. So we're slipping the first one knitwise. I am holding this down so I don't grab it. Now, as soon as I slide my needle in, I'm going to pinch this yarn down. So I have made sure I can't grab it any tighter. I already made sure it was the right size on the side. And once I put my needle in, I want to make sure I can't make it smaller or looser. So I'm going to hold that down. There's my slip knitwise. Now I'm going to purl. Now this one, sometimes, this is an odd angle. Sometimes you have to be careful about when you move it around. Once you get back here. Once you get that second stitch on, grab it. This one looks loose, but it's not. It only looks that way because I was pinching it. Now I'm going to grab this one, and I don't have to hold the first one anymore because that second one is locked in. I can't take yarn from the first because the second one is locked. So that was my purl. Here's my knit, and I'm going to grab this one. So I've got those 2 are locked in. And lastly, purl. And now that I have those 4 done, there's nothing I can do to mess with that first stitch anymore. It looks a little off right now, but it will look different when it starts to go, so don't worry about how it looks there. Pay attention to the fact that these are all the same size. And these over here, once I fix what I did with that white, these are all the same size. This white is still loose. It's locked in behind, but it's still loose. So when I tighten up my working yarn a little bit, I can make it the appropriate size over here. Get back here. Okay. So I did my 4. And then I'd be at purl to marker. All right, so I'm going to pause this and then go through a few more rows so I can show you how to do the 2-row color change. Okay, I'm unpausing for a second on row 104 because I want to show you that if you make one when you've got multiple colors, you make one in the live strand. So row 104 started with the border stitches. It was slip 1 purlwise and then knit, purl, knit. Don't do that. So slip 1 purlwise, knit, purl, knit. Okay? You slip your marker. Get back here, you little stinker. You slip your marker, and now you make one. Be sure when you make one, you are using your live strand. The next color, coming from here, is not a live strand. The yarn touching this is not a live strand because this was a slipped stitch. So always check your last stitch on this side. Let me point to it. The last stitch that was worked over here was this one right here. So you just did the stitch. The stitch underneath it was the last live stitch because your 4 border stitches are always live stitches. I'm sorry, not the first one. These 3 are always live. They've never been slipped. So this is your live yarn, or was your live yarn. I gotta be careful how I word this. This was your live yarn. The stitch underneath that one you just worked is the live yarn. So make sure you are using this bar. Not anything having to do with the orange. Not this one back here because that's from 2 rows below. You want the one that was attached to this one. If you're ever wondering, go back to the stitch before it. Here, I'll drop the marker so you can see what I mean. Put this back on. Okay. So, if you're ever wondering what bar to use, here's my slip-on purlwise, knit, purl. I'm going to knit. That means this is my live yarn. This is the yarn I'm going to use. So whatever yarn is attached to this is what I'm going to use as a bar. So when I knit, I want the yarn that was attached to that stitch, which is this. It's from 2 rows away. And now I'm going to make one with that. So I go through the back and I make one. But just make sure you're using the right yarn when you make one. Don't ever use the yarn from 2 rows below when there's a slip stitch. Check the stitch that was before it and make sure you're using the yarn that came from that. Okay, I'm going to pause it again. I'm only working a few rows of section 2, and then I'm going to go back into transition into section 3 so that I can show a color change on 2 rows. Okay, now again on row 106 for make one purl. I did the slip one purlwise, knit, purl, knit, and the next stitch is a make one purl. Be sure, if your yarn is more bunched up, I'm a pretty tight worker so it's easier to see, you're not using anything coming off of this stitch. You're using the yarn that was going to this stitch that was below it. So be sure you're using the right yarn, not the yarn that goes with that stitch that's next, but the yarn that went to the stitch that was before. So when I make one purl here, I'm going to show what I showed in the other video. I pick it up, instead of picking up this needle front to back, I pick up this needle back to front. Make them kiss and slip it knitwise. Man, I can't see what I'm doing here, sorry. You're going to slip that yarn over so it's twisted, and then you just purl the regular way because it's already twisted. There's your make one purl. And this is row 106, so it is a purl. Next. And then repeating knit, purl 2, and I will be back for color changes. Okay, I worked a few rows of what would be section 2, just to show there's the transition between 1 and 2. So you have garter from 1, transition, and there's a few rows of section 2. I'm going to show the color transition now if I was going from 2 to 3. So pretend that's a huge old section there. I'm going to use a different color this time. I'm actually going to use the exact same color I used in the pattern. I happen to have extra of this from another skein from a while ago, so I figured it'd be appropriate. So I'm going to show you how to do a 2-row transition now. Once again, the first stitch is slipped. And because the first stitch is slipped, you don't want to join here. It doesn't make any sense to join there. So I'm working this, and make sure I don't have a section that we're not working at. Yeah, section 3. I'm working this as row 151 would be. It's going to be slip knitwise and then purl knit purl. So slip the first one knitwise. And remember, this is going to be loose because I'm holding this for tension right now, but once I let it go, there's nothing there. So I'm going to pinch that stitch so that I don't loosen it up at all. And then it's going to be a purl knit purl. So I'm going to pretend if this was my yarn, it'd be coming through like that from the back. So I'm going to pretend it's my yarn. And I'm going to use the blue exactly as I would be using white instead. Except I am not going to go on top of it. Make sure the old color stays on the outside and the new color comes up from behind. So it'd look like that. You want the old color on the outside and the new color inside. It's a loose strand, so you could fix it easily, but it's just easier if you do it that way and stay in the habit of always bringing the new color up on the inside, because if you bring it up on the outside, it's very obvious. All right, so I'm on purl knit purl. Okay, I'm gonna bring it to the front. And the first one, I mean, on, oh, first one you don't drop your needle. The first one, you can literally loop it if you have to. Something just to get it on there. And I dropped the stitch up, so that wasn't helpful. Literally, just try to loop it on there. Something just to get it to hold. Because right now it's just loose yarn. Don't worry about the white ones because you can tighten them from the working yarn. Don't worry about the blue one. Just hold on to it for a second until it gets locked in. Knit. Purl. Okay, those are my 4 edge stitches. Now, this would not be the time you'd normally tighten it. I'm just going to do it so you can kind of get an idea that they don't matter where they are. They will be pretty. Okay, so there's my 4 edge stitches, and I'm at slip with yarn and back, knit. Oh, I'm sorry, knit, and then repeat, slip with yarn and back, knit. So I'm going to make sure you can see me in the camera. I'm at a really weird angle again. And I'm on screen. Okay, good. So knit, slip with yarn and back, knit. Once again, I'm so sorry. I can't see myself through this camera very well. Okay, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit. And in case you're ever wondering, the rule for slipping, do I slip it knitwise? Do I slip it purlwise? There is a very, very easy rule that goes with this. If you're not working the stitch, you slip it purlwise because you want to keep the orientation correct. See how all of them, this is as far as Western mounting goes, all of them have the right leg forward. If I slip purlwise, I keep that right leg forward. So if you're not working the stitch this row, and it's not a, a particular move where you're supposed to do something, then you slip it purlwise. If you are going to work the stitch, then you would slip it knitwise, just like slip knitwise, work it through the back or whatever. So that's your general rule. Slipping knitwise will twist it. Generally, when you're slipping it, you're going to, if you're going to work it right away, you want to twist it for a particular reason. Or sometimes it'll be purled just to move it over. But if you're not working it, 99.9% of the time, it's slipping purlwise to keep it oriented the correct way. Where was I? I was on knit, slip, knit. I'm on a funny angle again. I knit, knit, yep. Slip. Come back here. All right, make sure I'm on screen and make sure it's in focus. There we go. All right. Slip, knit, slip, knit. And on these rows, if you're using 2 different colors, once again, just like I said in the last one, if you're changing to a color that's obviously different than the first one, all you have to do is look for, after your border stitches, please stay in focus, thank you. After your border stitches, it should be every other stitch. So you could look at, pairs, dark light, dark light, dark light, dark light. Dark means I need a light, so I'm not going to work it. Slip. Worked, not. Worked, not. So it's pretty easy when you first switch to make sure that you're working the right stitch, and if you get lost on where you are, just make sure that you can see the every other pattern. Pair, 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 pair. And they usually do jump out at you if they're very different yarns. They'll usually jump out at you if you're not going in the right order. All right, I need a dark. That means I need to work it. And 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so slip it. Oh, I'm looking wrong. Slip the yarn and back, knit. Come back here. Slip the yarn and back, and knit. And the last 4 are purl, knit, purl, knit. Come back here, marker. Thank you. I know I've said this 100 times before, but there's no 3D when you look at a camera. So you can tell when I try to put a stitch marker on, I can't see where I am. I don't have the benefit of somebody standing behind me with a camera. I'm actually looking through it, recording. All right, so purl knit, and then row 152. So this is the return row of our new color. This is the first part of one of the transition rows where you're just changing to a new color. So we're going to slip it purlwise and then knit, purl, knit. Bring it to the front. Now, see how that's a big old funky thing? When I leave it in the back, it looks much better. It looks like it's the right size. When I bring it to the front, it looks kind of funky, but that's okay because it's going to twist back later. So don't even worry about it. Put your needle in, pinch it so it can't move, because you know how much yarn you need on that stitch. You need that much yarn on the stitch. Put your needle in and pinch it down. Wrap it, keep your thumb wrapped on that stitch, okay? When you bring it through, keep it down. Use a finger, use a thumb, use something to make sure that that doesn't move. I don't care about it now. I don't care about anything else because I'm holding the other part of the yarn. I can't do anything with that. I'm locked into how much yarn I have. See, if I pulled it too tight, I can always go back and move that around as long as I don't pull this too tight. All right, so slip purl and then knit, purl, knit. I've got knit, lock it, purl, lock it, knit. And now I'm going to show you that even though I pulled that too tightly, I can go back and play with it because I locked in the yarn afterwards. So I can go back and fix these and make them prettier later because I didn't allow the yarn to go through any farther. That blue is going to be just fine where it is, and I can tweak these whites around to make them pretty after. It's not a problem worrying about doing it now. As long as you locked down that yarn, you didn't do anything with any other yarn. You can maneuver it back to where it was. You can, slide just a little bit over to the stitch and you just even them out a little bit. As long as you lock it down and know how much yarn you need there, you're fine. You can always fix that later. It's just tweaking at that point in time. It's not something that, you have to figure out a way to make yarn disappear that shouldn't be there, or make other yarn appear out of nowhere that should be there. Okay, so I got my 4 borders, slip my marker. Once again, we are on row 152. That would be the second border row going from section 2 into section 3. So row 152, I slipped one purlwise and then knit, purl, knit. If you can see that 4th one. There are 4 border, knit, purl, knit. And the next one is a make one. So from front to back, and I like to put my needle in the front and just slide it to the back to knit through the back. That way I don't have to try to maneuver into a weird spot. And then we're going to do knit on the first stitch. And after that, we're repeating slip with yarn in front, knit. So once again, your old color is the one you're going to slip. You want to keep some of that old color. Just remember it that way. On your transitions from 1 to 6, you want to keep some old color. So if you get caught on, what part am I on? What stitch was I on? If it's the old color, you're going to slip it. And you're slipping it with the yarn towards the wrong side. So on the first row, you slipped with yarn in back because the back was the wrong side. Now the front is the wrong side, so you're slipping with yarn in front. You want to keep your slip on the wrong side. So I'm slipping with yarn in front, and then I'm going to knit this new color because I want lots of new color and keep the old. Lots of new color and keep the old. Lots of new color and keep the old. New, old, and new, and old. Get your butt back here. Make sure I didn't accidentally purl one of those when I was singing. And once again, see how these floats look like they're almost straight strands of yarn? That's what you want. You want them to have enough room to breathe. If you lock them together too tight, then your fabric's going to cinch up. It won't stretch the right way, And the stretch is how you get that pretty texture down here, because it forces these columns forward, which makes it makes it really pretty. It makes the old color kind of sit behind it, and the new color pushes forward, or vice versa, depending upon which part you're on. This actually will alternate depending upon where you are in the pattern, but it's made to have the rows push forward and some of them recede, and you need spacing on the floats to be able to do that. So once again, I don't even have to look at the pattern or try to figure out where I left off. I know that this is a new color, I'm knitting it. I want to match my color with knits, and I want to slip with my yarn on the wrong side on the other ones. Knit, slip on the wrong side. Knit, slip to the wrong side. And if you're running, if you're on the wrong side or the right side, look for that dash. Generally, when the purl bumps show, that's an indication you're on the wrong side. When you can see that those blips, purl bumps will make blips. It's just in the nature of them. There are ways to tweak this, but it's more of an advanced technique, and it's a pain in the ass. It really is a pain in the ass. So, just a heads up. If you see that blip, then you're on the wrong side. It helps when you don't have to try to figure out your stitches, when you can just look at your stuff and read it and know where you're at. So, new color. Match the new color. That means I want to work it. I want to knit it. Old color. I want to slip it so it stays there, but I want my yarn away from the front so you get to see lots of that old color. Knit. Show off that old color. Knit. That's right. The old people like to be shown off, damn it. I was in my 20s once, for all you young ones. I think I lived up my 20s enough for the next 20 years, because I'm like a partied camel. I saved up enough partying from my 20s that it's brought me into my 40s, where I'm boring as sin. Okay, let's see. Where was I? Slip it in front, knit to the marker, and then make one. Okay, so there in front, knit, and I'm going to make one. There's a regular old make one. Why is this a regular old make one here, if anybody's wondering? This is a regular old make one because it would be a knit stitch in pattern. The slip with yarn in front is treated as a knit here. There are rows where you're going to have a make one purl and a make one. The make one purls mean that it would have been a purl wherever it's sitting. So when you turn it to the right side, it needs to look like a purl to make the pattern fit. If it's a make one, it means that it would be a knit, so it needs to look like a knit to make the pattern fit. So the pattern, I assure you, between Jane checking it and it was tested, and then I am pretty flippin' anal when it comes to making sure that every single last little detail is right when I work them. Everything is right. So make sure you pay attention to what type of make one it is, because they are correct. They do not need to be edited or fixed. There's no misprint. They are correct. If it says make one purl, make sure you're making one purl. If it says make one knit, make sure or just make one, make sure you're doing a make one knit. And keep your make ones consistent. I'm trying to think of... I think Jane put it in here. She did put it in here on which kind of make one you're supposed to make on all of the make ones. The biggest thing is that you don't want to go back and forth between a make one right or a make one left, because that'll be more obvious. Whichever one you choose, stick to it. So it'll be best if you do what she wrote in the pattern. But if you choose to do the other one, always do the other one. Don't go back and forth. Sorry, I'm in a weird position and this is not comfortable. Okay, where am I? Knit. This is my make one, so I brought my yarn up. Get your tootsies over there. And I like to roll it around so that I don't have to try to maneuver on the back. I'm going to slip my marker. And then, this is why I always use sticky notes or paper or something to mark it off. Ah! Well, that was not fun. Yes, Italians talk with their hands. Not smart when you're holding knitting. Genius move there. I hope everything's oriented correctly. Okay, the end of row 152 is knit purl for the border. I'm going to go a little slower to make sure these are oriented correctly. and that I'm in focus again. Can you stay in focus, you little stinker, please? Come on, focus, baby. Focus. There we go. All right, so that's correct. Knit, and that's correct. Purl, and that's correct. Knit. Keep in mind, these are wobbly and wonky because they were new. And then the last one is a purl. Okay. Let me make these a little clearer. Remember, don't pull them too tightly because you'll have to fix it later. If anything, start with the one you just got done with and go from there. So that one, I'm going to lock it in. Now my blue color's good. This one, I don't want to pull it too tight, my starting, because I'll make that funny. And as long as my first one, my starting stitch, is in there locked behind it, it's okay. You can always play with that later. Make it a little looser, make it a little tighter. You just want it to sit there. And then the white, you don't want this too loose. So you want to check to make sure these are all the same size. That white looks a little bit large because it has the carrying yarn. That's what's making it look funny. This is the yarn that's going to come up for the next row. So it should look a little bit smaller than that. Don't worry about it now. After you're done, you can go back and do the same thing we did before, where you tweak it. You look for what yarn is coming from where, and then it goes to here, and you just play with the strands, move them around, and make them even out where you want them. Just watch where it's coming from, where it's going, okay? So this strand tightened that. Now, where's it going? Well, let's see. It comes, if I can get there. I'm trying not to split the yarn. Comes up here. Now where does it go? Well, goes in the back and it dips down. Pull it a little bit. And now where's it go? So you can play with those later. It's not a huge deal. Like I said, I went through at the end and just cleaned up all of my columns. It does not take long at the end to even these out. Just make sure that you're not too tight on these sides because they are going to need to stretch. So if they look a little funny right now, it's okay because they're actually going to need that movement because this part will move a lot. This part won't. So they need that balance to be able to stretch 2 rows. They're supposed to be bigger than the other ones because they're supposed to be 2 rows each. A little tiny bit above 2 rows. So don't worry about, going crazy about these. You can always tweak these stitches. You're just going to borrow a little bit of yarn across. This is the part, though, that you have to worry about is, so I hold that stitch. I want to make sure that stitch stays about the right size. Now I'm going to look at my white. This is what I need to carry. So this is a 2-row transition. I only worked 2 rows with the blue. Now I'm on row 153 and it says to pick up color 2 and drop color 3. So I'm going to drop my color 3. Don't worry about tail. Drop my color 3. I don't want to see white right here. I want it to look like there's blue. So you can tell. Remember how I told you before about carrying the yarns up the sides? Well, if you look here, those are tails. So don't worry about the tails. You see orange. You see white. You see orange. You see white. You don't see the opposite color there because we locked it in further behind. You won't even see this orange when it locks in back there. You can use it to even hide some of the white if you want. But that will get tied in there. This one will get tied in here. And you won't even be able to see these transitions at all. The white tail, when it gets cut after the next rotation, will hide in the white. The blue tail will hide in the blue. So you're never going to see these transitions. So don't worry about where they're coming out now. As long as you make sure this is where we trapped the white last time. And because we trapped it into the second stitch, you can't see it from the front. The only part you can see from the front is the part you're supposed to see. The part that is supposed to look like a white stitch. We're going to do the same thing up here now. You can see the 2 white stitches. You're going to be able to see a blue stitch, but that's all you're going to see is this one blue we want you to see. Don't worry about your tail. Your tail's not important. So when we bring up, let's show the live ones. Okay. I wish I could get this little stinker out of here. Let me hide this tail up front so you can't see it very well. And let me flip my stitch marker so it's not, it's gorgeous, I know. It's going to, come back here. It's going to distract you because it's too pretty. All right, let's hide all these tails. Okay, these are my 2 live blue that I just got done with. That's Gracia. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm pronouncing it as it would be pronounced in Italian. Posso parlare italiano. I can speak Italian, so I tend to speak or pronounce everything in Italian. All right, so this is the last one. Now, this white one is the one you want to use. You don't want to bring it up here because then it's gonna show on the side. You don't want it to show on the side. You want the pretty blue to show on the side. So we're going to carry this white. As always, you will bring them up from, we call it behind, but what it means is you're going to go towards the inside of the work. Drop my tail. All right. So I have, I'm trying to make this so it's easier to see. I have live blue I just got done with. And white is what I need to go to now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check this last white stitch. And I want to make sure it's about the right size. Right there looks like it's about the right size. I'm going to make sure the blue is the right size. All right, that's about the right size for a blue stitch. And the white should be right about there. Remember, it needs to come down too though. So if I'm holding it right here saying, oh yeah, that's the right size, but I can't stretch it, now all of a sudden that's a teeny tiny nothing when I try to stretch it. So make sure that when you go to stretch them, that looks like a good size right there. Stay. So there's my blue. My white looks good right there. I'm going to bring it up under. So I want it on the inside. My blue looks good. I'm going to grab this white. I'm going to make sure that this stitch is a good size, not too loose, not too tall. And as soon as I get it to where I think it is a good size, I'm going to pinch it. I'm going to pinch it and I'm not letting that white move now. The first one is a slip-one knit. Don't worry about how loose it is. It's loose yarn. There's your working blue over there, so it doesn't matter. You can fix it later. That's slip-one knit. And now I need to purl knit purl. I am still pinching this white yarn. So I'm going to let go of my tension and very gently bring it over. And what I do to make sure that I can't overly tighten it, I hold it on the front so that I'm not grabbing more than I'm supposed to. I stick my needle in, I wrap it, I bring it through, and then afterwards I double check it. And I make sure let's see, does that white stitch look good, that second one? Yeah, that looks like it's got enough room. It's a good size. And I'm holding this up, so that second one should be fine. So now that that's good, I'm going to lock it in, which means I'm going to hold on to this yarn so it can't go anywhere. And then I'm going to finish my last two, which are knit and purl. I knit, and I'm grabbing onto this white so I can't move it. And then I'm going to purl this one. Come back here. And I'm going to hold on to that one. Now that I've got that last one, I'm down a few, I can't mess with these anymore. So if I pull this blue one to make it look pretty again, you're gonna see ooh, I twisted my stitch, didn't I? Little stinker. Did I twist that? No, I didn't twist that. It just looks funny because I'm sideways. That's what happens when you look through a camera. This is a terrible angle. I can't see anything I'm doing. If you look at it, when I lay it out, this one's a little enlarged still, but you're looking for that stitch right there. You want to make sure that your colored, if I do this one more time, I'm going to scream. And I think that one's twisted now. You want to make sure that this stitch right here is not too tight. This one is still going to move because of live yarn. This one I can tweak later if it's too big. But you want to make sure that this one right here is not too tight. And that looks pretty damn good. So 4 stitches, I'm locked in. I don't even have to worry about it anymore. And that's how you carry after 2 rows. You come from the outside, you're going into that second stitch. And actually, you don't need to see the rest of this row, so I'll go over again how to tweak these like I did in the first video. So if you want to tweak your edge stitches, I did it at the end, but if they really bug you, feel free to do it whenever. If you're not getting enjoyment out of it, if this is causing you, stress, if it's bugging you that they're big, by all means fix it, because the whole idea of this is that you have fun. Let me get it closer down here so you can see it better. Okay, so get out of their tails. I'm trying to make this easy to see. All right, so this stitch got a little stretched out when I was showing a make one. So let's watch, let's check to see. Remember, the left leg is actually coming from the back. The right leg is the one that's coming to the front. So I'm gonna look for this right leg. If you want to, you can just pull this and see where it moves. I happen to know by looking at it that it comes around here. So I'm gonna pull that until I like that size a little bit better. And that to me looks like a decent size. Now I need to lend this yarn to the next stitch in line. I see it coming back here and I see it going around. So let's make it easy and just go a little bit over. All of the strands, please. Thank you. So I brought it over to the next one. Now, where's it go? It goes down and comes down here. I think I'm too far. Let's see. Right there. By the way, if the reason I did that is because I know that if you have a loose strand, like a loop on the front, if you go to pull it on the other side, it'll come up easily. So I knew that wherever it was going to loosen easily. And now I know it's coming from there. And now it's gonna be back easier on the front again. So let's go to the next spot on the front. And see how it's coming up easily? If I was to pull another stitch, it wouldn't come up easily like here. Oh look, if I pull from there, it's not moving easily. But if I hit the right spot, it comes up without a problem. So I'm way less yarn now. I gave a little bit to every stitch coming around. I still have a little bit left to go though. So I'll keep going. I mean, you have, 300 stitches to do this on? So you can make it look really pretty. I mean, even if you had a big chunk, I've had to do that before in projects where I wasn't paying attention to what I did, or my tension had changed and I had to go, try to fix an entire row. And that's what I did. I used a few hundred stitches worth to even it out and send it down the line. It goes through there. This goes through here. And finally, I'll give it to this stitch. So now you look at the side, and that huge ugly stitch is not a huge ugly stitch anymore. My first one is actually getting pulled up because I have the cord too high. So this one is actually a good size too. That's the next one. I would do the exact same thing, except part of it is because it's a tail. So once again, you can very easily fix these edge stitches and make them look nice. And they want to stretch by the end. So if anybody has any questions after that, please send me PM. If you, I'm gonna do another video in a minute about counting, how to count this section. So I will be back with that one, but I'm gonna post this one. Okay, good luck everybody.